That experience really like woke me up.
Take that success away, then what are you left with?
You never stop the chase. Then you go through your whole life, 30, 40 years, and you go, geez, what's the point?
I remember the feeling of the stress, but I don't remember what I was stressed about. So it's like, man, what a waste of time.
You can want less than you have. Happiness is there.
And you had one talk you could give to them at the end of your life. What would almost be like the title of that talk? Chris, thanks for coming on. We have known each other for a couple months now, and it's been really fun to get to know you and all of our conversations around purpose and connection and relationships and work and business. And we're just excited to hear a little bit more about you today. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do for work, and then we'll dig right in.
Well, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Jay, for having me today. Chris Hansen from Hansen Capital Group from Oregon. 42, turning 43 this week, father of two, and figuring out life still on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What do you guys do at Hansen Capital, and tell us a little bit about the backstory there and how you got into that?
So in college, after college, I got into mortgage banking, which slowed. That was in 2005. Wholesale, like pools of mortgage loans with Wells Fargo. And in 2008, that slowed rather rapidly. And I ended up jumping into the commercial real estate, starting with residential real estate, but distressed real estate, foreclosures, all that kind of stuff. I bought a property at the foreclosure auction, cash advanced my credit card and paid $36,000 for this house, and then started renovating it to fix and flip. Kind of a long story to how I got into that spot and wanted to buy a house, but that's grown into today. We manage a few $100 million of industrial real estate predominantly. We're in escrow on 4 deals for $120 million right now. We just had a big exit to a JP Morgan backed group to sell a bunch of our first industrial fund assets. But within Hansen, we're that asset manager. We also run a property management company that does all of our, kind of internal property management. And then we also have a mortgage bank that does hard money lending and commercial capital markets work for ourselves and external customers.
So a lot of people would hear kind of
all those phrases of private equity that mean nothing to anybody.
$100 million here.
Yeah, well, a lot of people I think would be like, man, you're set. You must be happy. You have it all. You have what you want, when you need it. And like, walk us through your journey around this whole idea of what money means, because we've actually had quite a few conversations around that, to be able to have a lot at your disposal, but your relationship with that has really changed throughout the years. Walk us through what changed and how it's changed.
Well, I mean, you nailed it. I have it all figured out, and it's easy. Life is perfect every day, the money's there and everything's solved. But aside from that, I think probably the biggest epiphany or eye-opening experience for me was I still don't feel like I have any or have enough. So there's some sort of like, inner childhood thing of I wanted more, I didn't have it, and I'll go work really hard to get it. But there was an event, I remember very distinctly the first time I had $1 million of liquidity, and became a millionaire. That I thought that would be a really big event. And similarly with 10 million and 50 million. And, you set these milestones, and at each one, there was no confetti, like nobody jumps out. Like there's literally no change. Kind of reminds me of like when somebody passes and then you kind of have that next, maybe it's a day, a week later, you're just like, like the world doesn't stop. Nothing changes. The financial resources that I chased so aggressively, it was a long time. I think I was at least 40. So I think I'd been doing it 20 years before I realized like, hey, I probably can do just about anything I want. and started doing some of those things and just realizing that it's not as fulfilling as I thought it would be. And this is coming from somebody who would tell people like, hey, don't get too excited about that first million because that's not going to be enough. Or don't get excited about 10 million. It's not going to be enough, because they're fleeting achievements, basically.
I heard Matt Damon talk about when when him and Ben Affleck won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting. They were super young. It was their first like big film that they'd done, and they won these Oscars. These young kids, basically. And Matt Damon was talking about how he's glad that they won it so early, only to understand that it's not worth anything. Because there's other actors that they don't get an Oscar until they're in their 60s or 70s. And it's like they build their whole career to finally win this award. And then for him, when he won it, it was almost like he realized this isn't something to chase after. Yeah. This award is not like gonna make me, And like, sure, it opened up opportunities for him. Sure, it was, probably it made his career excel. But for him himself, like that award kind of was like not fulfilling.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not like a big sports guy, but I watched I like watching autobiography type stuff of people who are at the top of their game. And yesterday or last night, I saw something that was Reggie Miller.
Nice.
And he was talking about not having got the championship. And he was talking about how he had been so close, but he'd not won it. And he was talking about the emotion of working for the people on his team that were like playing with, broken shoulders and like that kind of stuff, that's what was driving him to push harder. But he feels like his career was a failure because he was in the finals and he didn't win multiple times. So it's like that's the exact opposite of what you're describing. That guy chased his whole career, the chip that he never got, and feels like he failed, whereas anybody else could be like, Reggie Miller's not a failure. Right.
Yeah. When you watch that, did you resonate with that? And how so?
Yeah, I didn't think of it in the context of this conversation, obviously, of like, hey, he was still a success. I could relate to the like having been in the game and not felt like you won. Because I mean, we're 60 days out of this JP Morgan transaction, which is significant for guys in my space, in the commercial real estate space, to buy assets when we did, which we bought them in 2020 through 22, and now just sold at just over a 4x multiple on capital. Like that's an unheard of result. And to do it during this time frame, it's like, I talk to guys a lot in our space and they're like, congrats, you're the only guy who made money during that period of time. Because it was significant. And, a big personal liquidity event. And as we've talked about, I mean, I bought myself a watch. It was so unfulfilling personally, right? Because it didn't really feel like that big of a win, even though it's significant in every sense of the word. A lot of people have said like, that's the, crown of your career so far. And to me, it's just like, well, we put a thesis together. We did the work, we executed on the plan, we got the result, it was good. It didn't change anything.
I feel like that resonates with a lot of what I see inside of leaders. The future, they're running towards the future by fleeing from something in the past or by chasing something that they feel like they need in the future. So they're either running away from something, a feeling of insecurity, a feeling of not good enough, a feeling of the pain of the past, and they just want to kind of run fast so that they don't have to think about that, they don't have to feel that, they don't have to ever feel vulnerable again. That's often why they're in positions of power, so they don't have to feel vulnerable like they had to feel vulnerable so often. So they're running from that, or they're chasing significance, purpose, to be enough, to feel enough. And I think what's hard about that second one of the chase that you're describing, and I know, I've experienced and a lot of leaders have experienced, is as soon as you achieve what you thought was going to be the thing, you need the next goal in order to feel empowered or excited or, that life is worth living. So you never stop the chase because you need the next thing in order to feel like life is worth waking up for. But then you go through your whole life, 30, 40 years, and you go, geez, what's the point? All I did was chase the high and the win, and I never got what I needed. But to pause and rest and kind of wait is actually a worse feeling than continuing to chase the next high. And it's often because we don't know what we want. We don't know who we are, and we really don't know what it means to feel fulfilled in life.
Yeah.
And as you go through that journey and as you're discovering, and we've talked a lot about this, what are some inklings that you have about what is the purpose of life and what truly does bring true fulfillment outside of money and success?
I think I agree and relate to what you're describing of that pursuit, because as a competitor, whether it's athletics or business or anything else, it feels like a competition, not even with somebody else, but even with myself. So it's like, okay, that trophy's won. What's the next one? I find fulfillment. I find odd moments. Like, I'm not an unhappy or a depressed guy. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty happy, joyful guy in general. But I do have those moments of like pure contentment, or of like, okay, this is why I work hard. Unfortunately for me, most of those come at very expensive intersections of like having my family on the jet headed on a vacation, or so, like those kind of ultra rare moments that are not very long, but it's like, okay, this is what I worked really hard to do, because this is a neat moment of reflection. But I find a lot of joy when I can find that contentment. I think happiness is fleeting, and I think contentment, there is maybe a better target to aim for. And there's a guy, Arthur Brooks, Harvard, professor of happiness, I think is the course he teaches. He may not, I may be giving the credit to the wrong place, but he has a equation of basically happiness is the things you have minus the things you want. Meaning, if you can adjust your numerator instead of your denominator, if you can want less than you have, happiness is there. Or being content with what you have as opposed to what you don't have. And the other guy who I think speaks to this from a different perspective is Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach. Like bridging the gap or closing the gap. If we're always looking at that horizon, you'll never get to it, and kind of getting comfortable in that space in between.
An important question that me and my wife have had through the last really 2 years specifically is, business has gone well, and we've been, in a better space than we've ever been before, and there's always potential to grow. But is this question of what is enough for us? We look at our home, we look at our cars, we look at where our kids are at, we look at community, we look at money, and we're like, what is enough? And one really cool thing that's taken place over the last year is when we dug down to it, we realized we really did not need a whole lot to actually feel happy and content in life. And I do think that's a byproduct of, the last 10 years of work that I've had to do on myself around where I place my identity, where I define my sense of worth, how I work on my sense of purpose and build authentic and meaningful connections. I don't know if I would have been able to say that this year without the 10 years of work to do on myself to get back to letting go of all the things that I grabbed to define my sense of worth or meaning in life. But when I said that, it was an extremely freeing experience, because then everything else in life is like the cherry on top of the cake, where it's like, it's more about fun and passion and play than it is about trying to keep up with the Joneses or trying to have the thing or I need the thing. It's just, no, I want the thing for fun. Mm-hmm. I want the trip just because I want to have fun. I want to have exploration. I want to have an adventure, but do I need it? I don't need it. But I'd love to have it. And that's, I think, a delicate space of contentment that is beautiful to find when you're able to find it.
Yeah. So there's that really famous study on money saying beyond like 75 grand of annual income doesn't lead to more happiness. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get links to this, because it was, the classic like money doesn't make you happy statement. And they've been pointing to this study that was done in like the early 2000s maybe. Last year, there was finally some bigger study that said that's nonsense. It's absolutely not true. People with higher incomes, it does lead to more happiness, and it like debunked this whole thing. And I loved that, because I was always like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, there's people who are happy with lower incomes, but I don't know that happy is the right word. I think they're content. They don't have the ambition or the drive to go get more. They're content where they are. So it's not that they're happier, they're just content. And I've had envy. I have a college buddy who he works in education, and he's got kids. Our parallel paths are very different financially, but like his contentment and like life quality compared to my own are not dissimilar at all. He's probably more content than I am. So like I'm striving to where he is in that regard. Or that other saying about like the Mexican fisherman. You familiar with that one?
I love that. Yeah, the Mexican fisherman.
Yeah, like the American comes down and he's like, "What do you
know
do
the
all
story,
day?"
Andy?
No.
Oh, it's good. Do you want to tell it, Jay?
Tell it, man. Yeah.
So there's an American traveling down to Mexico, and he meets this fisherman, and he's having a conversation, and the guy's like, what do you do all day? And he's like, I fish, just so I could feed my family, and I get up when I want, and I hang out with my family, I play guitar with my friends, like life's great. And the American's like, oh, well, you should get a second boat, and you should start hiring people, and you could build this big business, and then in 10 years you can sell it. And he's like, well, why would I do that? He's like, oh, well, when you sell it, you can sleep in late, you can hang out with your family, you can play guitar with your friends. And it's like, that's the American mindset. Like, oh, you just got to do more and more and more. Like, this guy's like, I already do all that, Like, so I think that concept, I got stuck on that path. Let's just build it and make it bigger. And it's only been recently where I guess I've accepted, like, okay, there's nothing that's going to like meaningfully change the future financially. Or that's not true. I could certainly meaningfully change the future financially. I don't know that it would lead to a different like happiness reflecting back, from 80. Would I be happy that I traded more life for X million? Like, debatable, probably not.
A quick break from our sponsors.
Most leaders have everything on paper and still feel empty inside and distant from the people they love the most. Not because they haven't done enough, because they've never stopped to slow down and ask the deeper questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I actually feel? Most high performers skip right past those questions and spend years building a life that looks full on the outside, yet feels empty and unfulfilled on the inside. My book, Uncover Your Purpose and Identity, is built for that exact reason. 6 chapters that help you discover your purpose and redefine who you are and what truly matters. This process takes you from foggy to grounded and empty to fulfilled. I've worked with leaders across the country, business owners, athletes, and executives, and the pattern is always the same. Outward success, yet inward drift. This book is the conversation most of them wish they had 10 years earlier. If you're ready to stop running aimlessly and start living with real clarity and connection, pick up your copy on Amazon, search Uncover Your Purpose and Identity. You've built a lot, now build the one thing that brings lasting fulfillment, a life of purpose, meaning, and connection.
And back to the episode.
There's this concept that, do you know who Andy Puttycombe is? He started Headspace. So I do these runs, and I use like the Nike Run app, and Nike Run partnered with Headspace to do these like guided runs and stuff. And it's just like to help you clear your mind and blah, blah, blah. And they're really great. And one of them has this idea, and I actually did a commercial for Nike Run, and I used this specific Headspace guided run. And they talk about the blue sky. And the blue sky, picture it as like the blue sky is everything you need, okay? Sometimes clouds come, like sometimes there's like a little cloud that comes and you might fixate on that cloud and then it goes away. Sometimes there's a storm that rolls in and you can't see the blue sky, but it doesn't change the fact that the blue sky is still there. It's behind the clouds. And the whole idea behind it is we always have what we always need. And we may not always see it, but it's always there. just like the blue sky is always there. A storm will come and we may feel like we can't see it, but we still have what we need. The storm is just kind of altering our vision of it. And then it's up to us to decide if we focus on it or not. It's up to us to decide, like, do we let this storm make us afraid? Do we let this storm make us feel like something bad is going to happen? A tornado is going to come or whatever. Whether it does or it doesn't, the storm passes. But the blue sky doesn't pass. It's there every single day. And it's one of those things where whether we have money in our bank account or not in our bank account, it's kind of that idea of like, this too shall pass, you know, whether we have all these awards and our business is thriving or we're struggling and our business is suffering, we still have what we need. You know, we're still here living, breathing. You know, you still have your 2 kids, you know, like we still have the people around us, and money comes and goes. But like at the end of the day, we still have these people in our lives. We still have these passions and these desires. And it's so easy for us to tie our identity with our success. But you take that success away, and then what are you left with? And I've really been kind of learning a lot about that, of like, success does not define my purpose. Success does not define my meaning. Like I was going on a walk with one of my kids like 2 days ago, and I like to ask them this question. I have 4 kids, and like they want to like do individual stuff all the time. So I get to do these like walks individually with them instead of groups, and I get one-on-one time with them, and it's so special. And I'm sitting there with my 3rd kid, and he's 9. I had to like really think about how old he was. He's 9, and I hadn't asked him this in a while. And I'm like, so dude, like, what do you want to be when you grow up now? You know? And he said the most complimentary thing without trying to compliment me. And he's like, well, I've been thinking a lot about it lately. And before, he wanted to be like a race car driver or like a car designer or something like that. And he's like, I think I want to be a dad. And I'm just like, what do you mean? He's just like, well, I see you and like you have fun with us. And he's like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I'm like, man, that's like my little blue sky moment right there, you know? And it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with success. It has everything to do with me just being a dad, you know?
Human beings have learned how to adapt over and over to different changes and times, whether it's the Great Depression, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, and all these different things. And I think the conversation we're having right now is an important conversation because human beings are going to have to adapt. I think more than anything, Americans are going to have to adapt, because what we're talking about around money and success and performance and getting stuff done, we've had lots of conversations on this. The relevance of the whole concept of money could change. The relevance of where you find your sense of success in a day based on how many things you got done and accomplished may greatly change. That you might actually not be the producer anymore. You might be the receiver. And that's a weird position for us as Americans who are very independent and kind of make a name for ourselves, that we are always the creators, always the producers. And what if AI and technology and humanoid robots become so advanced that we become the consumers, the byproduct of abundance rather than the creator of the abundance? And I think that's going to change a lot of the way we see and make sense of who we are. And this conversation, I think, is extremely relevant because we've spent the last 20 to 30 years reinforcing this idea that our title, what we do, and how much we make is a definition of who we are. And it's starting to have to shift, where people are having to find something deeper on the inside about what wakes them up in the morning, what keeps them going. And to me, I typically see that as a byproduct of, there's purpose on one side. What is my purpose? And the way in order to get there is typically through 2 different tunnels. The first tunnel is through our pain. And when we go back and we look at where we experience pain, and then it defines our passion, and our passion gives clarity to our purpose. So this makes me want to ask you the question, Chris, of where have been maybe 1 or 2 places of pain in your story that when you go back and you deal with those places of pain, or heal those places of pain, or even acknowledge those places of pain, somehow they ignite a passion in you to do life a different way, to show up a different way, to love your kids a different way? What are moments in your past that have drastically shaped who you are today for the better?
2 of them, and they're both around medical issues. The The first one was in 18. My daughter got a cancer diagnosis, and I was with it was wild. I was meeting with a YPO mentor. Like I was in EO at the time, so I had been assigned a YPO mentor. It was our first meeting, and we were at my office, and my phone kept ringing, and it was my kid's mother, and I muted it because I wanted to respect his time, and I was explaining like this hierarchy of my business at the time, or businesses, and he was like, the awesome thing about this, Chris, is it's like complex, it's cool, it makes money, like that's all great, but your risk is it requires you. And when we wrapped up that meeting, I took that phone call and drove to the hospital, and it led to about a 10-month inpatient issue for my daughter. She had acute myeloid leukemia. She wasn't allowed to leave the hospital, and it like threw work upside down, and that gave me that was that big wake up of like, hey, this could be gone, and you're not, so I didn't quit, but I like backed out of what we did. That is what led to us buying the first industrial property. So it was a big shift. I had been a apartment investor, which is like value add, improve the apartments, resell them, and it had been more time consuming for me at the time. And I'd never bought a triple net piece of real estate. And those are in theory a lot easier because you own it, the tenant sends you money, and if there's a roof issue, that's their problem. Like you don't do anything else in triple net real estate. So that was the first one. And I mean, we lived in the hospital. I'd alternate with their mom. I'd be in there a day or two, and then we'd swap for a day or two, right? And when I came out of that, I was like, all right, I need to build infrastructure and team. And because I won't say I was a one-man show because I wasn't. I'd had 15 staff or something. But that experience really like woke me up. And then it was only 2 years later where my dad got sick with cancer, and he passed from it in a really short period of time. He had glioblastoma. And I'd watched him want to do certain things his whole life, but not necessarily do it. He was financially very conservative, saving. And I was a little wilder with my financial habits. Like I work really hard, really diligent and like responsible, but my outlet would be, I'm going to go buy the car I want or something like that. And I grew up around motorsports with him, and I compete in motorsports. So like that's my outlet. Well, he wanted a particular Porsche like his whole life, and he finally bought it. And he got sick like a week after that and never got to really enjoy it. So that was like a difficult, that sucks, right? So the lesson there was like, hey, you could be prepared and diligent your whole life, and you could get a phone call that you're not, you're going to die.
Yeah, it's hard, I think we are creatures of control, like
It's not me.
Yeah, we want to have like everything planned out, and we want to have security, we want to have safety, we want to have money in the account, we want to have the next 5 years planned out. We want to have our goals going in line. But then, gosh, I feel like the last 10 years, nothing has gone to plan whatsoever. And it ends up working out better, But there's been challenges that, I don't know, like I know with your daughter, gosh, I couldn't imagine something like that happening. But I'm sure that it built some sort of connection and growth in you that you may not have ever have gotten had that not have happened. Not saying that that should have happened, but I'm finding more and more that the more I let go of control, the more it opens me up to potential I didn't even know was inside of me.
Yeah. People would frequently say like, I don't know how you're dealing with that. And it's like,
You don't have a choice.
nobody asked, like you just get to do it, So it was really tough, but that was one of those big moments of like, in hindsight, that did change her and my relationship. It changed my whole perspective on the world, and I would say for the better. Like, I'm not going to say cancer is a good thing, right? In any sense of the word, but it's where, and I think you and I have talked about this, it's where that perspective of like, is this good or bad is really a choice or a mindset, because those labels of good or bad, like it just is. right? And you could go on a drinking bender for a year and people probably wouldn't blame you. I chose to work out and get in the best shape of my life, and like those were all choices from here's these circumstances that are happening. How do I want to respond to it? That it was just one of those impactful events where like you can't unlearn those experiences.
Moments of, like I'm saying, moments of pain shape what you focus on as your passion and what defines what matters most in life. You brought up these two beautiful stories, very difficult stories, but I can tell they've shaped who you are. And on the other podcast I was doing, we posed this question because with Neuralink and some of all these other procedures going on, there is a potential in the future, maybe 10, 15 years from now, where we will have the option by the click of a button, whether we want to minimize suffering and pain and sadness and maximize pleasure and joy based on modulating. These are neural synapses in our brain, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all these. We may be able to modify those. This is sci-fi, but it's also becoming more of a reality as we learn more about the brain and what we can do with the brain. And when I ask people, if you had a choice to shut off all sadness and amplify joy and excitement, would you do that? And people really sit with that, and a lot of them say no, which is weird because you have these extremely difficult situations in your life. I had a very difficult situation where I had a condition called hyperhidrosis, where my hands, my feet, my armpits would sweat profusely. I still have it on my feet, but I don't have it on my armpits and hands anymore because I had a surgery when I was in junior high. But I had that for a long time, and it was extremely socially isolating. I couldn't even touch people's hands. I had to bring extra shirts to school because my shirts would have these huge rings of sweat. I couldn't do my homework because my paper would get instantly wet. The amount of social isolation that brought and pain. And I remember sitting there and, I'd watch these healers on TV, like Channel 21 or whatever, where they're like healing people. And I'm like praying to God. I'm like, God, why did you give this to me? And I'm just crying and praying, just heal me. Like, why do I have to have this? Why do I have to suffer with this? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything bad. And yet I have this condition that makes me suffer. And now what I realize, that has made me so empathetic and attuned to the sufferings of others. It made me so soft. It made me so connected to other people who suffer because I know what it's like to feel lost. I know what it's like to feel lonely. I know what it's like to feel hurt. And I think if we lose pain, we lose the opportunity for empathy and the ability to find purpose and meaning. And it's this weird dyad between, can you have purpose and meaning without fully embracing the purpose and meaning of pain in our life? And I really don't think you can. At least I haven't figured out a way to splice those out, but I do think pain is an essential part of our joy. And when we're always chasing a dopamine high, we miss the opportunity to really experience what you're talking about, is this deep fulfillment.
Yeah, my answer would be no. I wouldn't want that app or that control. And it almost comes back to the money side of it, what we were just talking about. I think some of the, I'll say, like turning down the brightness of the game of business is when those rewards, because I think most really wealthy guys, I'm not talking to me, like real rich guys, they're playing a game and they're just keeping track with a scoreboard in their bank account, right? Any video game you ever played as a kid, once you beat it or once you used a cheat code or something, it's like, all right, our novelty wears off like instantly. It's not fun, right? And I think I've experienced that to some extent on the business side of it. Can make pretty good sized checks, and it's like, it's still Tuesday. It didn't change anything. They were way more meaningful at the start of the game than at the end of the game. I think that, like, that's awesome. They can do it, and that technology exists. I'm sure there's applications for it, but I would be so adamantly against that for people I'm close to, being able to manipulate those, because how could you?
Because what do you think pain gives us in life? And this is a question for both of you. What does pain give us in life that it would almost be like a death sentence to our existence to get rid of it?
Well, so I see two ideas pop up in my head. One, like a very simple one, which is like you talked about working out and stuff. In order for your muscles to grow, you have to tear them down. And so like that pain is essential to muscle growth. You cannot have it without some sort of breakdown and pain. So it's like, in order for there to be growth, there has to be the breakdown. So like there's that idea. But then Alan Watts has this famous talk, and it's called Nothingness. And the whole idea is, in order for there to be something, there has to be nothing, because you can't have something without nothing existing. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, in order for there to be happiness, in order to enjoy happiness, you have to know what sadness is. Otherwise, happiness is kind of meaningless and pointless.
It's not measured against anything.
Yeah.
So you can't amplify it or measure.
Yeah. It's just a feeling at that point. So it ends up, I feel like you have to have these, and we call them negative emotions, and I'm not necessarily sure that it is necessarily negative. I feel like they're
That's
more
a label.
essential emotions. Yeah. I feel like they're just essential emotions. Like, you have to have pain in order to appreciate the good parts in life. You have
to have the contrast.
Yeah, you have to have the contrast. Otherwise, it's absolutely
and most
meaningless.
leaders, I would say, if you ask them, one of my philosophies is pain is the pathway to growth, and they'd say, absolutely true. I know what that feels like in business. I know what that feels like in fitness. I know what that feels like in, my money and all these things. But then you talk about, when's the last time you cried in front of someone? When's the last time you didn't tell them you had a hard week last week? You looked at them in a moment and you said, I'm having a hard week right now. I'm suffering and struggling right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I feel lost and I need help. And they're like, that doesn't happen very often, because that's a different kind of pain that we are not tolerating in American society well. We're tolerating the pain that gets us to growth in success and business and physical health. We don't know how to tolerate relational discomfort, conflict, repair, emotional vulnerability, needs, hopes and dreams, fears, and emotional pain inside of ourselves. So like, I'm really curious, why do you think so many of us are so comfortable with the concept of pain in one category of life, but then completely avoid it or run away from it when it deals with relationships or our emotions of sadness or fear?
As a guy who runs from emotional closeness,
Maybe share your
breakneck
personal-
speed. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with, pain as a teacher or my law. I win way more from my losses than my wins. All those kind of sayings are frequent for me, but maybe it's a male thing. We're taught to be less emotional, have less feelings, display them less. I don't know why that's so much more difficult. But I find with my kids, I'm really encouraging them to be in touch with those emotions and feelings and having those discussions. But with my wife or romantic partner, it's harder for me to reconcile those differences when emotions get involved. I know how to coach my kids. When I see my partner struggling, it's harder to say, hey, you should just do this. Because I've never made the right suggestion, but maybe I don't use the right words. Women are certainly a mystery to me, at least in those how to navigate these kind of challenges.
You're describing three types of relationships. There's relationships where we play a role to pour into others, like children or people we mentor or people on our team that we're there to coach, mentor, guide, support. So it's a downward stream. We're typically comfortable in those because we possess power and control, and it's not vulnerable. And then there are other relationships that we literally pay people to play a role above us to guide, coach, and mentor us, which isn't bad. It's just part of the game, but it's also not super vulnerable because we've literally made kind of contracts with people that you're here for me to support me, and I get to be able to process and talk, and I think that's good. But the third category that people are most uncomfortable with is face-to-face, same-level relationships. Not one up, not one down, face-to-face, where it's fears, frustrations, dreams, hopes, pain, sadness, and it's right here, right now, equal level playing field. That is what it means. That's what emotional intimacy means. And I think we really struggle at times, I think many of us really struggle to know at times, how do we do that well? Because it's so freaking vulnerable. It's so risky. It's so hurtful. But at the same time, C.S. Lewis has this beautiful analogy where he says, if you only open up this much to love, when love flips over into hurt, it can only hurt you this much. So love little,
Protection mechanism.
if you open up to love this much and you give yourself fully to someone, when it flips over on the opposite spectrum, how big is that gap of pain? It's massive. So we often love little because we don't want to hurt much. But I found that the fullness of life comes by really opening up to that vulnerability of love and that resilience to know I am going to be hurt, but I have the skills and the ability to work through that. And relationships are better, not because they don't have fractures, but because fractures have been healed. To me, that is around the idea of purpose and meaning and what's significant, learning how to have face-to-face relationships where there's vulnerability, deep love, but you also sign up for deep hurt.
Interesting. You threw a lot out there that all of those pieces make sense to me about the 3 hierarchy levels. Those peer ones are, I can think of relationships where I'm subordinate with mentors or something, where it's like people I talk to for wisdom. And those are easy. And the downstream is where I spend most of my time probably with employees and, other people. But those peer level ones, I have the least experience there, I feel like.
Well, when I think about your little tier, and you're talking about like mentorships who are pouring in, like there is like a sense, I don't want to say superiority with the mentor, but there's another thing that I think about of like why we experience pain and stuff. And I think part of it is also to help others. I don't remember what movie this is. I'm so bad at this, of like remembering my references, but I just saw like a little scene from this. And basically like these 2 guys are talking and he gives an example of a man is walking down the sidewalk and he falls into like a manhole. And there's no ladder or anything. He can't get out. Okay. So people are walking by and then somebody walks by. It's a doctor that walks by and he's like yelling, help, help me, help me. Doctor looks down, writes a prescription, throws it down the hole. It's like, well, what good is a prescription going to do me? I'm stuck here in this pit. Therapist walks by. The guy's like, help, help, help. And the therapist is like, oh man, like, how are you feeling down there? And he's like, I'm stuck. I'm really like, I need to get out. Can you help me get out? And therapist's like, that's great that you're able to acknowledge those feelings. Like, think about that for a little bit. And then he walks away. A pastor walks by and he's like, oh, please help me. So he writes a prayer and throws it down the manhole. And he's like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Then he sees his friend walk by. Say his friend is named Joey. And he's like, Joey, help me. Dude, you understand me? Help me. What does Joey do? He jumps in the manhole. And then the guy's like, dude, you idiot. We're both stuck in here. And so Joey says to his friend, he's like, no, man, like I've been down here before. I know how to get out. Let me help you get out. And to me, like I see like not the mentorship type thing of like, let me guide you in this experience, but it's like, man, your pain I've experienced too. Like, let me be here for you. And let me help you get out of this. Like, let's do this together. I think that's a good reason why we need to feel these essential negative emotions, because not only does it help us grow, but it gives us the opportunity to help others grow and help others get out of that manhole.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
What do you feel like if you, Chris, were with a group of people and you had one talk you could give to them at the end of your life to inspire, to encourage, to guide, what would almost be like the title of that talk?
No prep, just sum up your life with a title on the spot. Sure.
I know you think about it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I've been debating which one to go with. The title.
Or what would the theme be?
Yeah, the theme. I've learned a lot of things in my 42 years to date, but I think, and it's ironic because my parents told me this and I didn't understand or believe them. I think I would tell them to just relax and go with it, because there, as we were talking about control earlier, Jay, like nothing in the last decade's gone how you planned it, and holding on tighter or pushing harder may or may not have impacted that. But you said you had some relief there. I've kind of learned that in my own unique way of like, man, I'm a bit of a planner. I like to make a plan and then go execute on it. And that saying about everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, as Tyson likes to say. If I could get, I guess it depends who our audience is, but is it peers, is it kids, is it family? But I think that message would be universal of just letting it be, like it's going to be okay, regardless of that direction. I know that's not the most insightful.
So everything's going to be okay. And how would you explain to someone if they asked, what do you mean by okay?
It's going to be acceptable. It's not going to be unacceptable, because you're not going to be responsible for it. Like, that good or bad is, again, our own labels we apply to things. So everything just is. So if it's okay, it is what it is. Man, I got sayings to stack on top of sayings right here. But you know what? Does that make sense at all? Yeah. Like, meaning it's going to be okay.
It's almost like you have to submit to something outside of yourself that has more control than you do, whether it's an energy, a higher power, a system, a person, whatever it is, for someone to be able to say all of life will be okay, which means it goes in the direction it's supposed to go. And there is potential for peace, love, happiness, and joy there. Like, to me, if I was to define what is the okay, it's that I could let go of my life, and somehow that there's beauty, goodness, love, connection, and purpose at the end of my road for me and for those I love the most. And in order for me to believe that, I have to believe that I am not in control of my universe, and that there's something outside of me that is, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, whether it's a higher power. And I think that is one of the most important places, going all the way back to this idea of contentment, is we will not learn to let go unless we have something to let go to. Because you can't just let go to like the random air. You got to hand it off. It's not letting go, it's handing it off. And I think that's a really important concept around contentment, peace, and letting things go, is don't let them go, hand them off. But you have to have something to hand them off to that is smarter than you, better than you, more loving than you, and has somehow an understanding of how the whole world and life makes sense. Otherwise, it's just hard.
You guys know that pale blue dot saying from Carl Sagan at all? So there's Voyager 1 or Voyager 2, one of them, that was sent out off into space to just go outside of our solar system. And there was this one image where 1 or 2 had taken a picture of Earth, and it's like this teeny tiny little blue pixel in the blackness of space. And then it's Carl Sagan, he is this astrophysicist, and he just talks about, like, right there, like, all of our wars have been fought, all of our leaders have been there, all of the like, every single person has lived and died there. And it's like this interesting perspective of, like, it's almost like none of this matters, like, we are going to live and die. That's certain. Nobody on this planet is going to live forever. We're going to live and die. And then it's kind of having this perspective of, like, this life is such a rare, beautiful gift. And then when we start to get that idea of the chances of all three of us even being alive and the people that we are is so rare. Like, we have more of a chance of winning the lottery 500 times than actually being alive.
This time, this space,
this
our
this
story,
location,
our gifts,
meeting the people. Like, it's just,
and it's so special to just move through so fast.
Yeah.
I created these videos for these boys, and one of them, I was talking about generosity, and I talked to some of them, and I said, what's the first thing that a baby does when it's born? And they're like, oh, it cries. And I'm like, no, In order to make an audible sound, you have to have breath in your lungs. You have to move. When you speak, you move air out. You don't inhale air when you speak. So you have to take a breath in. And I said, what is the last thing we do when we pass away? That breath goes out of our system. We breathe out. So from birth until death, we breathe in and we breathe out. That really, it's a model of why we're here, and the purpose of life is to receive gifts that we have not earned, the beauty of life that we have not worked for, we just get as a gift, and to give those gifts of love, generosity, hope, and care to the people that matter most and the people that we love and lead. That is, to me, I think, from birth to death, gives us a picture of what are we supposed to do here on earth.
Our time has come to end our podcast. I think you asked the great question with the theme of whatever that question was. That was a good one.
Yeah, I think we should end it with maybe one of those questions and put his answer on the end.
Not the, it'll be okay.
No,
Not that one.
Well, because it makes me think of the blue sky thing too. Like in the end, like it's going to be okay because we still like have everything we need.
It's crazy.
Well, I would rephrase it though a little bit, like to not be so serious. Because I think what you're saying is, and you were saying it too to some extent, like it's almost insignificant. It doesn't matter. But like we get so worked up by being so serious in our own mind, we're making it really important. How your little blue dot ties back to, like, whatever we're dealing with, that we're worked up and angry or yelling or just uncomfortable, it's so irrelevant.
Yeah,
whatever that issue is.
I brought this up before on like previous talks, and it's like I remember when I was reflecting, when I turned 40, I was reflecting on my life, and I remember times where I was just so stressed and overworked, but I don't remember what I was stressed about or what I was working on. And it's like, what a beautiful, but it's like, what a simple way to see how unimportant it was, because I remember the feeling of the stress, but I don't remember what I was stressed about. So it's like, man, what a waste of time.